The sealed room. Some stories begin with a meeting in the light, others in the dark. But Un-woo and Jie Young began in complete darkness, inside a locked escape room, during a blackout that swallowed the entire city. What started as a game quickly transformed into a haunting confrontation with their past, their secrets, and a tragedy that bound them long before they knew each other's names. It was supposed to be simple fun. Both Un-woo and Jie Young had signed up for the new escape room experience that had just opened downtown. Neither came with friends. He had chosen solitude after a long week at the law firm, and she, ever the profiler, thought solving puzzles would sharpen her mind outside the crime lab. They didn't expect to be paired together. Strangers bound by circumstance. The escape room was designed as a psychological thriller, a dimly lit chamber filled with riddles, cryptic locks, and false doors. At first, they played their parts. Un-woo's easy charm surfaced as he joked through the clues. Jie Young, analytical and composed, quickly took the lead, her sharp eyes finding hidden codes others might miss. But then, just as they reached the final stage, everything went dark. At first, they assumed it was part of the game, another twist. But when minutes turned into hours and the emergency lights failed to flicker on, the realization sank in. This wasn't a game anymore. The city outside had gone dark, and the sealed room they were in was no longer entertainment. It was a trap. The first hours passed with uneasy silence. Jie Young pressed her ear to the door, listening for footsteps, but none came. Un-woo tried his phone. No signal. The world outside had vanished. They rationed the bottled water and snacks left behind by the escape room staff. But as hours stretched into days, survival instinct sharpened. They began to talk, not out of choice, but necessity. At first, their conversations were surface level. Work, daily routines. The odd coincidence that both had chosen solitude that day. But confinement has a way of peeling back layers, and soon the masks they wore began to crack. On the second night, with the room suffocating in heat and silence, Un-woo confessed. "I used to believe I could save people," he said, his voice low, his back against the cold wall. "But somewhere along the way, I realized I wasn't saving anyone, just defending the worst of them." Jie Young turned her head toward him, surprised. "You're a lawyer?" He nodded, his silhouette barely visible in the dark. The kind that wins cases people don't deserve to win. At first, it was survival, debt, family, all the usual excuses. But after a while it became who I was. There was a tremor in his voice, the sound of a man who carried guilt like a second skin. And the worst part? I don't even know if I regret it for them, or just for myself. Jie Young didn't reply, but something in her chest tightened. His words struck chords in places she had buried for years. By the third day, it was Jie Young's turn to speak. She had resisted, holding her secrets close. But isolation has a way of forcing honesty. "My father was a cop," she said quietly. "One of the best. He used to tell me that the law wasn't about punishment. It was about balance, about keeping the world steady, even when it wanted to fall apart." Her breath hitched, but she pressed on. "He was killed during an undercover operation. Wrong place, wrong time. Or maybe just wrong people, the kind who always seem to walk free." In the silence that followed, she thought she heard Un-woo's breathing falter. "I became a profiler because I thought maybe if I understood the monsters, I could stop them. Maybe I could finish what he started." Her voice grew hard, edged with years of unhealed grief. "But no matter how many cases I solve, it never feels like enough. The world doesn't get steadier. It just gets darker." For a long time, neither spoke. The room was silent except for the sound of their breaths, both carrying the weight of ghosts. It was on the fourth day that realization dawned. Jie Young had been tracing the details of her father's last case aloud, recalling bits and fragments, as if speaking them into existence might ease the burden. She mentioned names, places, even the lawyer who had stood in court and ensured the killer walked free. When she spoke that name, Un-woo froze. The silence stretched like a blade between them. Jie Young noticed. "What is it?" His voice cracked. "That lawyer was me." The world seemed to stop. The blackout, the sealed room, the hunger, all faded compared to the revelation that hit Jie Young like a physical blow. The stranger locked in with her wasn't just anyone. He was part of the tragedy that had defined her entire life. Her body trembled with rage and betrayal. She rose to her feet, the darkness around her vibrating with her voice. "You're the reason he's dead. You're the reason I grew up alone." Eun-woo didn't deny it. He couldn't. His voice broke with the weight of truth. "I didn't know, Jae-young. I swear to you, I didn't know what it would cost. I was young. I thought winning meant survival. But I've carried it every day since." The sealed room had forced them together, but fate had bound them long before. Hate, forgiveness, and something in between. The days that followed were not peaceful. Jae-young swung between fury and silence, her profiler instincts warring with the raw ache of betrayal. Eun-woo, stripped of charm and pretense, let her rage fall on him, believing he deserved every word. But confinement has a way of blurring lines. With no escape, their emotions couldn't be hidden behind distance. Anger became dialogue. Dialogue became confession. Confession became something closer to understanding. On the sixth day, when exhaustion finally broke her anger, Jae-young whispered, "I wanted to hate you. I still do. But hating you doesn't bring him back. It just keeps me in the dark with you." Eun-woo, voice raw, answered, "Then let me stay in the dark, if that's the price. But I need you to know I regret it, not just because of you, because I should have been better. I should have chosen differently." On the seventh day, the door finally opened. Rescue teams found them dehydrated, weak but alive. The citywide blackout had ended, and with it, the illusion that the sealed room was infinite. But neither Eun-woo nor Jae-young walked out the same. To the rescuers, they were just strangers who had survived a blackout together. To each other, they were something far more complicated. Enemies bound by tragedy, strangers forced into intimacy, and perhaps, in some twisted way, two souls who had found pieces of themselves in the shadows of the other. The days that followed were strange. Jae-young returned to her work, sharper than ever, but haunted by the memory of Eun-woo's voice in the dark. Eun-woo, too, went back to the courts, but the weight of her father's case pressed heavier than ever. They told themselves they wouldn't meet again, but fate has a way of twisting paths. When they did cross again, outside in the world light, it wasn't as strangers. It wasn't as enemies. It wasn't even as friends. It was as two people who had been stripped of every mask, forced to confront the darkest parts of themselves, and had lived to carry those truths forward. The sealed room isn't just a story about confinement during a blackout. It is about the rooms we build within ourselves, the ones sealed by regret, grief, and guilt. For Eun-woo and Jae-young, that room was literal, but was also a metaphor for the secrets they carried. Stories of survival rarely begin with silence, but this one did. For Eun-woo and Jae-young, silence wasn't just the absence of light. It was the weight of the unknown pressing against the walls of the sealed escape room. The city outside had vanished into blackout. The door that once promised freedom was now immovable, indifferent to their pounding fists. And two strangers, lawyer and profiler, were left to face not just the dark, but each other. The first thing they noticed wasn't fear, but disbelief. When the lights flickered and went out, both assumed it was part of the escape room's design. A new twist, a harder challenge. But when the emergency lights failed to flicker on, and the sound of power humming through the walls faded, unease crept in. Jae-young pulled at the door, her fingers tightening. It's locked from the outside. There should have been staff waiting. Eun-woo tried his phone. Dead signal. Maybe the blackout's across the block. It'll be back. But even as he said it, his voice lacked conviction. He was used to controlling rooms, commanding attention with ease. Here his confidence felt thin, like a suit that no longer fit. For Jae-young, the silence was heavier. She pressed her ear to the door, straining for sounds of footsteps, voices, anything. There was nothing, just stillness, so thick it seemed to swallow them whole. The first hours became an odd dance. Two strangers pacing the small space, occasionally bumping shoulders in the dark, neither willing to admit how unsettled they were. Eun-woo tried humor first. Well, at least it's not zombies. Imagine trying to escape that. Jae-young didn't laugh. Her reply was clipped. Humor won't get us out. That sharpness intrigued him. Most people soften under his charm, but not her. Even in darkness, her presence felt sharp, calculated. She wasn't simply enduring this. She was analyzing it. She, in turn, found him suspiciously calm. Too calm. It was a kind of composure she often saw in suspects during interrogations, the mask of someone skilled at hiding. By the 5th hour, hunger and thirst began to gnaw. They searched the room, finding a few leftover bottles of water and snack bars the escape room staff had overlooked. They split the rations evenly, though neither said the word share. It was an unspoken contract. Eun-woo unwrapped a granola bar and offered half to her. Ladies first. Jae-young eyed him. Equal first. She snapped it in half and handed one piece back. For a moment, their hands brushed. Even in the dark, the contact was sharp, startling. It wasn't intimacy, it was awareness, breaking the silence. It was Jae-young who finally broke the silence of their confinement. "You don't seem worried," she said, her voice calm but probing. Eun-woo leaned back against the wall. "Worried? We're locked in a game room during a blackout. Eventually, someone will come. Or they won't," she countered. "Then what?" There was a pause. Then he chuckled softly, though there was no humor in it. "Then I guess we'll learn a lot about each other." She turned her head toward him, narrowing her eyes in the dark. That sounded like a threat. "No," he said quietly. "A prediction. Shadows of personality." As hours stretched, their differences became clear. Jae-young was restless, circling the room, running her hand along the walls, checking every corner. She hated stillness. It reminded her of nights spent staring at empty chairs, of unresolved cases that gnawed at her conscience. Eun-woo, in contrast, sat still, conserving energy, his voice filling the silence with anecdotes, stories of law school, of clients who made bizarre excuses, of nights when he convinced juries of impossible truths. But beneath the lightness of his stories, Jae-young sensed something heavier. She had profiled enough liars to know the difference between humor and deflection. He laughed to distract himself, not her, and though she wanted to ignore it, a part of her was curious. What kind of secrets does a man like that hide? By nightfall, with the blackout still unresolved, they found a candle in a prop box. Lighting it filled the room with a dim, flickering glow. For the first time, they saw each other's faces clearly. Eun-woo's features, sharp and composed, softened in the flame. His smile looked less like charm and more like armor. Jae-young's eyes, dark and piercing, carried exhaustion, but also defiance. She didn't look like someone afraid of the dark. She looked like someone who had lived with it. They studied each other in silence. Two strangers, illuminated not by light, but by shadow. As the second night approached, conversation became necessity. Words filled the silence where fear might otherwise fester. Eun-woo spoke first, his tone unusually somber. "I used to think winning was everything. That as long as I stood in court and convinced the jury, I was doing my job. But lately," he trailed off, staring at the candle's flame, "I'm not sure what side I'm on anymore." Jae-young tilted her head. "You're a lawyer?" "Yes." His smile returned, but it was faint, tired. "A good one. Some say too good." Her chest tightened. She knew lawyers like him, silver tongues who freed monsters. But something in his voice made her pause. It wasn't pride. It was guilt. Still, she said nothing. Instead, she filed away, as she always did, building a profile in her mind. At some point in the endless night, rain began to fall outside. The sound against the windows was faint but constant, a reminder that life existed beyond the sealed walls. Eun-woo closed his eyes, listening. "You know what rain reminds me of? My mother used to say it was the sky washing its sins away." Jae-young looked at him, startled by the softness in his tone. She hadn't expected vulnerability from him. "My father used to say the opposite," she murmured. That rain made the streets more dangerous, easier for people to hide in the shadows. Their gazes met, the candlelight flickering between them. Different worlds, different lessons, but both shaped by shadows. By the end of the second day, something had shifted. They were no longer strangers waiting for rescue. They were two people tethered by confinement, forced to look at each other without the distractions of the outside world. Jie Young caught herself watching the way Eunwoo's hand lingered near his jaw when he was lost in thought, or how his voice softened when he spoke of things that mattered. Eunwoo, in turn, found himself studying the determination in her movements, the way her eyes missed nothing, the way silence seemed less like absence and more like a weapon in her hands. It wasn't affection. Not yet, but it was awareness, dangerous, consuming, undeniable. Neither of them knew, in those first days, the truth that would eventually destroy the fragile bond forming in the dark, that Eunwoo's past and Jie Young's tragedy were one and the same. For now, the sealed room was only a prison of walls and silence. But soon,